Robert Gordon Bobby Orr, OC is a Canadian former professional ice hockey player, widely acknowledged as one of the greatest hockey players of all time. Orr used his ice skating speed, scoring, and playmaking abilities to revolutionize the position of defenceman. He played in the National Hockey League for 12 seasons, starting with 10 with the Boston Bruins followed by 2 with the Chicago Blackhawks. As of today, Orr remains the only defenceman to have won the league scoring title with 2 Hart Trophies. He holds the record for most points and assists in a single season by a defenceman. Orr won a record 8 consecutive Norris Trophies as the NHL's best defenceman and 3 consecutive Hart Trophies as the league's most valuable player. Orr was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1979 at age 31, the youngest to be inducted at that time. After his hockey career, he became a well-known scout for many professional teams. He also spends a lot of his time talking to and mentoring young exuberant skaters. Orr started in organized hockey at age 5. He first played as a forward, but was later moved to defense by his coach, Royce Tennant. Going against the standard practice of the time, Tennant felt that Orr's offensive skills were best suited for a rushing defenceman role, and he gave Orr the freedom to play that role despite its inherent risks. With Orr in defense, the Parry Sound Shamrocks had many successes. After Tennant, Bucko McDonald coached Orr, and Orr continued to excel against small-town Ontario provincial competition on defense. At 14, Orr joined the Oshawa Generals, the Bruins' junior hockey affiliate, and he was an All-Star for 3 of his 4 seasons. In 1966, Orr joined Boston, a team that had not won a Stanley Cup since 1941 and had not qualified for the playoffs since 1959. With Orr, the Bruins won the Stanley Cup twice, in 1970 and 1972, and lost in the 1974 final. In both victories, Orr scored the clinching goal and was named the playoff MVP. In the final achievement of his career, he was the MVP of the 1976 Canada Cup International Hockey Tournament. In 1976, Orr left Boston as a free agent to join the Blackhawks, but repeated injuries had effectively destroyed his left knee, and he retired in 1978 at age 30. Orr's first professional contract was one of the first in professional ice hockey to be negotiated by an agent. It made him the highest-paid player in NHL history as a rookie. His second contract was the first $1 million contract in the NHL. However, after his retirement, Orr learned that he was deeply in debt and he had to sell off most of what he owned. Orr broke with his agent Alan Eagleson and sued the Blackhawks to settle his contract. Orr and his family returned to Boston, where Orr went into business to rebuild his finances. Orr aided the investigations that led to Eagleson's fraud convictions and disbarment. Orr also supported the lawsuit that exposed the corruption of the NHL's pension plan. Orr entered the player agent business in 1996 and today is president of the Orr Hockey Group Agency. As of 2009, the agency represents over 30 active NHL players. Orr is also active in charitable works and in television commercials. Since 1996, Orr has coached a team of junior hockey players in the annual CHL Top Prospects game. Orr was married in 1972. He is the father of 2 sons and is a grandfather. Hockey career. Early life. Orr was born in the town of Parry Sound located on the shores of Georgian Bay in Ontario, Canada. His grandfather, Robert Orr, was a top-tier soccer pro player who emigrated from Ballymena, Northern Ireland to Parry Sound early in the 20th century. Orr's father, Doug Orr, had once been a hockey prospect himself and was invited to join the Atlantic City Seagulls in 1942 but turned down the offer. Doug Orr instead joined the Royal Canadian Navy, serving during the Second World War. He returned after the war to Parry Sound, to Ava Steele, whom he had married before he left for war, and to a job in the CIL dynamite factory. Doug and Ava had 5 children together: Patricia, Ronnie, Bobby, Penny and Doug Jr. Bobby was born on March 20, 1948 at St. Joseph's Hospital, where his grandmother Elsie Orr worked as a nurse. Bobby was a sick baby at birth and his survival was tenuous. Bobby Orr displayed his hockey talents from an early age. Orr played his first organized hockey in 1953 at age 5, in the minor squirt division, a year after getting his first skates and playing shinny. Although he was tiny and somewhat frail, he soon was able to skate faster than anyone his own age, speed he demonstrated in races around the rink and in games. Until he was 10 years old, Orr played on the wing, as a forward. His coach, former NHL player Bucko McDonald, moved Orr to defense. Although Orr played defense, McDonald encouraged Orr to use his talents as a stick handler, a natural skater and scorer to make offensive rushes. According to McDonald, "I used to tell Doug the kid was in his natural position when he played defense. You didn't have to be genius to see that honest. I don't think Doug agreed, but he accepted my decision." Orr would later credit McDonald, "Bucko taught me almost everything I know." Orr was first noticed by the Boston Bruins in the spring of 1961, playing in a youth hockey tournament in Gananoque, Ontario. The Bruins' Ren Blair described him as a combination of Doug Harvey and Eddie Shaw. The Bruins immediately pursued Orr. Blair made regular visits to the family home. In the fall of 1961, the Bruins invested $1,000 to sponsor his minor hockey team. Although 3 other NHL teams were interested in Orr, he signed in 1962 with the Bruins. Orr explained that he signed with the Bruins because they're a team of the future. "They're rebuilding and I want to be part of the building program." Blair was involved with a plan to start a new Oshawa Generals franchise in a new arena in Oshawa, Ontario. Despite the Bruins already having a junior hockey franchise, the Niagara Falls Flyers, Blair was able to convince the Bruins to own another. He arranged a deal whereby the Bruins owned 51% of the franchise. But Orr would have to play for Oshawa. When Orr was 14, Blair convinced the Orr family to allow Bobby to attend the Flyers tryout camp. When camp came to an end and it came time to sign with the Bruins, a meeting with Bruins owner Weston Adams went sour and Orr headed back to Parry Sound. Blair was able to smooth over the situation and convince Ava that Bobby was old enough to leave home. To get the Orr's signatures on a C form, committing Bobby to the Bruins at age 18, Blair agreed to have Bobby stay in Parry Sound for his schooling, skipping Generals practices and only driving south to play games on weekends, a 3-hour trip one way. The bonus for signing was $10,000 Canadian, a new car, and the Bruins would pay to stucco the family home. Orr debuted in junior in the 1962 Euro 63 season for the New Generals in the new Metro Junior A League. Orr was only 14, competing against 18, 19 and 20-year-olds. The 1963 Euro 64 season brought further changes as the Metro League folded and Oshawa joined the Ontario Hockey Association. Orr moved to Oshawa, where he started attending R.S. McLaughlin High School and boarded with a local family. Orr scored 29 goals to set a junior record for goals by a defenceman and was named to the OHA's first All-Star team. Orr's goal and point totals increased every year during his junior career and he was named to the OHA first All-Star team every season he was in the OHA. Orr had his best season in 1965 Euro 66, his 4th season of junior. Orr scored 38 goals to increase his goal-scoring record, and finished with 94 points to average 2 points per game for the Generals. The Generals finished 4th in the league but won the OHA Championship, the J. Ross Robertson Cup, by defeating the St. Catharines Blackhawks, the Montreal Junior Canadiens and the Kitchener Rangers. The team defeated the Northern Ontario champions North Bay Trappers and the Quebec champions Shawinigan Bruins to win a berth in the Memorial Cup final for the Junior Championship of Canada. Oshawa's hopes in the Cup final were damaged when Orr suffered a groin injury against Shawinigan, an injury that is painful and weakens a player's skating ability. To promote the event, held in Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens, the Generals had advertised that this was the last chance to see Orr in junior and were anxious for him to play. Bruins management demanded that Orr not play in the final, not wanting to risk any further damage to their property. Orr and his parents, however, were adamant that he be allowed to play for the national championship. As he was not yet signed professionally to the Bruins, they threatened that he would never play for Boston if he was held out. Blair decided to defy the Bruins' ownership and let Orr play. While Orr dressed and played some, he was not a factor, and Edmonton defeated Warsaw for the cup. Warsaw coach Becky Dillon was fired for letting Orr play, while Blair left the organization of his own accord to join the expansion Minnesota North Stars. Orr and Eagles in equals. By the time Orr turned 16 in 1964, he was still 2 years away from playing in the NHL, and his father Doug was dissatisfied with the Bruins' treatment of the prospect. Doug had asked the Bruins' Blair for more money for Bobby and was turned down. Doug Orr met Toronto lawyer Alan Eagleson at a juvenile fastball tournament dinner in Parry Sound and asked Eagleson to help out with the situation. Eagleson agreed to work with the family for free and continued to do so for the next 2 years. Bobby and Eagleson developed a relationship Orr would later describe as being like brothers. The two soon became a team, discussing Bobby's future plans without his father Doug. Eagleson was determined to get Orr a top salary. When Hapims, the general manager of the Bruins, offered a $5,000 signing bonus and $7,000 and $8,000 for his first 2 years in the league, Eagleson countered with $100,000 for the 2 years Orr would refuse to play with the Bruins and play for Canada's national team instead, like Carl Brewer. Orr wanted desperately to play in the NHL, but he went along with Eagleson's strategy and was willing to play for the Nationals. The Bruins and Orr agreed on a $25,000 signing bonus, and a salary less than $100,000 for the 2 years, a figure kept secret. Speculation has ranged on an annual salary of $25,000 to $40,000 at a time when the typical maximum rookie salary was $8,000. The official signing ceremony was done on Ames boat, the Barbary Lynn, where Eagleson and Ames had conferred during negotiations. At the time, it made Orr the highest-paid player in league history. But beyond that, the signing became one of the most important in the history of professional hockey. Until that time, players had been forced to accept whatever NHL management paid in salaries. It was the start of the player's agent era in professional hockey. For Eagleson, it was the start of his sports business empire. Based on the Orr signing, Eagleson would become the executive director of the new National Hockey League Players Association and started on his rise to become one of the most powerful men in the sport and business of ice hockey. Bruins career 1966 Euro 67, Orr joined the Bruins for the 1966 Euro 67 season, his first as a professional. The Bruins were not convinced at first that Orr belonged on defense, trying him out at center first. Through the pre-season, Orr was given jersey number 27 to wear. At the season's start, the Bruins offered him jersey number 5, that of past Bruins star Dit Clapper, but Orr declined and chose jersey number 4. Orr made his NHL regular season debut on October 19, 1966, against the Detroit Red Wings, getting 1 assist. On October 22, he scored his first NHL goal against the Montreal Canadiens. It was a slap shot past Gump Worsley, and the Boston Garden crowd gave Orr a standing ovation. In that first season, Orr was challenged physically as a rookie by the veterans, and he earned respect by fighting Montreal tough guy Ted Harris and defeating him in his first NHL fight. On December 4, 1966, Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman Marcel Prunovas checked him into the boards, injuring Orr's knees for the first time in the NHL. He would miss 9 games and the Bruins would lose 6 of them. The team finished with a 17 Euro 43 Euro 10 record, leaving the Bruins in last place. However, attendance at Boston Garden had increased by 41,000 fans. For the season, Orr scored 13 goals and 28 assists, one of the best rookie seasons in NHL history to that point by a defenseman. Orr won the Calder Memorial Trophy as the league's outstanding rookie and was named to the NHL Second All-Star Team. New York Rangers defenseman Harry Howell won the Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman that year. In accepting the award, Howell said he was glad to win when he did, predicting Orr will own this trophy from now on. Orr was runner-up in voting. 1967 Euro 68. In 1967 Euro 68, his second season, injuries limited Orr to just 46 games. Prior to the season, Orr had injured his right knee during a charity game in Winnipeg during the summer, requiring 5 weeks in a cast. In December, a Frank Mahavlich check caused a fracture of Orr's collarbone and a shoulder separation. Orr returned in January in time to play in the NHL All-Star Game, his first appearance of 8 appearances overall. Orr had to sit out 5 games afterwards due to soreness in his left knee. In February, he had to leave a game against Detroit after his left knee went stiff. He would receive the first of his many operations on the knee, repairing ligament and removing cartilage. Orr did return to finish the season, but required a further operation during the off-season to remove a bone chip. Despite the injuries, Orr won the first of a record 8 consecutive Norris Trophies and was named to the NHL's first All-Star team. After finishing last in 1966 at Euro 67, the Bruins qualified for the 1968 playoffs, their first appearance in the playoffs since the 1958 Euro 59 season. In the pre-season, the Bruins had added Phil Esposito, Frederick Stanfield and Ken Hodge from the Chicago Blackhawks in one of the most famous deals ever made. The Bruins also added rookies Glenn Sather and Eric Sanderson, developing a more aggressive image that led to the nickname of the Big Bad Bruins. The Bruins, happy to make the playoffs, were swept by eventual champion Montreal in the first round. 1968 Euro 69, in 1968 Euro 69, Orr skipped the pre-season to rest the knee but was in uniform for the season start. He required an ice pack on the knee after every game and missed 9 games after he caught a skate in a crack in the ice, twisting his knee. He returned to the lineup and finished the season playing through the pain, sometimes struggling to get up to speed and relying on teammates instead of making the plays himself. In other games, Orr was outstanding, scoring his first career NHL hat-trick on December 14 against Chicago, adding 2 assists for a 5-point night. He scored 21 goals on the season, breaking the goal-scoring record for a defenceman, and totaled 64 points to set a new point-scoring record for one season for a defenceman. Orr developed a feud with Toronto rookie defenceman Pat Quinn that season. In a late-season game, Orr attempted to knock the puck loose from the Maple Leafs goaltender Bruce Gamble and Quinn cross-checked Orr to the ice. Orr kicked Quinn and Quinn kicked Orr. On-ice officials broke it up, but the feud continued into the 1969 playoffs. The Bruins finished second in the NHL's East Division and drew the Maple Leafs in the first round. In the first game, in Boston, Quinn caught Orr with his head down during a rush, and caught him with an open ice hit, knocking Orr unconscious. Quinn, assessed 5 minutes for elbowing, was attacked in the penalty box by a fan and Quinn swung at the fan with his stick, breaking the glass. Quinn went back on the ice and the Boston fans showered garbage onto the ice. Orr was carried out on a stretcher to the dressing room where he revived after the concussion. According to a Boston cop at the scene, the fans here don't like anybody to touch Orr. He's there. Frank Merriwell and Jack Armstrong rolled into one. To my thinking, it looked like a clean check. The game degenerated from that point into a brawl after the score reached 10-0 for the Bruins. The Bruins went on to sweep the Maple Leafs before losing in 6 games to the Montreal Canadiens in the second round. Orr returned for the third game against Toronto, getting 2 assists as the Bruins won their first games in Toronto since 1965. 1969 Euro 70, in 1969 Euro 70, Orr doubled his scoring total from the previous season, to 120 points, 6 shy of the league record and led the league in scoring. As of 2014, Orr is the only defenceman in history to win the Hart Trophy as the league's leading scorer. In addition to the Norris and the Hart, Orr captured the first of 3 consecutive Hart Trophies as regular season MVP and later won the Conn Smythe Trophy for his playoff performance, becoming the only player in history to win 4 major NHL awards in one season. Orr went on to lead the Bruins in a march through the 1970 playoffs that culminated on May 10, 1970, when he scored one of the most famous goals in hockey history and one that gave Boston its first Stanley Cup since 1941. The goal came off a give-and-go pass with teammate Derek Sanderson at the 42nd mark of the first overtime period in the 4th game, helping to complete a sweep of the St. Louis Blues. according to Orr. If it had gone by me, it's a 2-on-1. So I got a little lucky there, but Derek gave me a great pass, and when I got the pass I was moving across. As I skated across, Glenn had to move across the crease and had to open his pads a little. I was really trying to get the puck on net, and I did. As I went across, Glenn's legs opened. I looked back, and I saw it go in, so I jumped. The subsequent photograph by Ray Lussier of a horizontal or flying through the air, his arms raised in victory as he made the shot. He had been tripped by Blues defenceman Noel Picard while watching the puck pass by goaltender Glenn Hall. Has become one of the most famous and recognized hockey images of all time, and today is highlighted in the opening sequence of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's Hockey Night in Canada telecasts. 1970 71. The following season, the powerhouse Bruins shattered dozens of league offensive records. Orr himself finished second in league scoring while setting records that still stand for points in a season by a defenseman and for plus-minus by any position player. Orr's Bruins were heavy favorites to repeat as Cup champions, but were upset by the Montreal Canadiens and their rookie goaltender Ken Dryden, at one time Bruins property, in the first round of the 1971 playoffs. For the season, the Bruins gave Orr a solid gold puck. One of four they gave out to Bruins players to each of the four Bruins who scored over 100 points that season Esposito, Orr, Johnny Bickett and Ken Hodge. Orr later gave his puck to Alan Eagleson. In 2007, Eagleson sold the puck in an auction of memorabilia for $16,500 Canadian dollars. 1971 72, Orr signed a new 5-year contract on August 26, 1971. For $200,000 per season, the first $1 million contract in the NHL. In the following 1971 72 season, Orr placed second in the scoring race to teammate Phil Esposito, and won the Hart and Norris Trophies, helping the Bruins to a first-place finish in the East. In the 1972 playoffs, Orr led the Bruins to the Stanley Cup again, leading the scoring in the playoffs and scoring the championship-winning goal against New York. For his performance in the playoffs, he was awarded his second Conn Smythe Trophy as playoff MVP, making him the first two-time winner of this award. Rangers forward Vic Hadfield commented, "We played them pretty even, but they had Bobby Orr and we didn't." By this time, Orr already knew that his left knee was deteriorating and he would not have many seasons left. Orr also won the MVP award at the 1972 NHL All-Star Game to win 3 MVP awards in one season. The 1972 73 saw upheaval at the Bruins. Coach Sinden became the general manager. Bruins players Jerry Cheevers, Derek Sanderson and Johnny McKenzie left to join the upstart World Hockey Association. Coach Tom Johnson was fired 52 games into the season, replaced by Bep Dillon, who had once coached Orr. The Adams family, which had owned the team since its founding in the 1920s, sold it to Stora Broadcasting. The Bruins season came to a premature end in a first-round loss in the 1973 playoffs, losing Esposito to injury in that first round. Orr himself did make it to 101 points during the regular season, but had only 2 points in the playoff loss. 1973 74. In 1973 74, Orr led the Bruins to another first-place finish in the regular season. The Bruins made it to the Stanley Cup final, but lost this time to the Philadelphia Flyers. Flyers coach Fred Shero commented, "They had Orr and he can do an awful lot. But we've got 17 good hockey players and every one of them put out." It was 17 against 1. That season, Orr set the record for the most points in a game by a defenseman, scoring 3 goals and 4 assists in a November 15, 1973 game against the New York Rangers. One goal, a shot from the blue line, broke Rangers defenseman Rod Seeling's stick. 1974 75. In the 1974 75 season, Orr broke his own previous record for goals by a defenseman, scoring 46 goals to go with 89 assists for his 6th straight 100-point season. He won the league scoring title and the Norris Trophy for the second time. 1974 Euro 75 was his last full season and his last season playing with Phil Esposito. The Bruins placed second in the Adams division, and lost to the Chicago Blackhawks in the first round of the 1975 playoffs, losing a best-of-3 series, 2-1. The 1975 Euro 76 season was Orr's final season with the Bruins and it was tumultuous. Orr's contract was ending after the season, potentially making him a free agent. The Bruins were sold by Stora Broadcasting in August 1975 and the new Jacobs ownership group had to promise to keep Orr as a condition of the purchase. The Bruins and Orr reached a verbal agreement with the Jacobs during the summer of 1975, including a controversial agreement for Orr to take an 18.5% share of the Bruins after his playing days were over. The agreement was to be checked out as to whether it would be legal for tax reasons and whether or not the league would approve it. Before the season started, however, Orr underwent another surgery on September 20, 1975. The Bruins' contract talks with Orr and Eagleson became difficult. The Bruins insurer would not insure a contract with Orr and doctors advised the Bruins that Orr would not be able to play much longer. Orr returned to the lineup on November 8, 1975, the day after the Bruins traded Esposito to the New York Rangers. Orr was able to play the next 10 games for the team, but had to stop on November 28 due to pain in his knee. The next day, he underwent another knee surgery. Originally expected to only be out for 7 to 8 weeks, his knee did not respond to therapy and he returned home to Parry Sound. His season was over after 10 games and he would not play again for the Bruins. His impending free agency led to speculation that the Bruins would trade him, but despite his injury, they were negotiating to keep him until the end. During his Bruins career, Orr was often the player the press wanted for a post-game interview. Orr instead would hide in the trainer's room. Teammate Terry O'Reilly described him as a very private, very shy guy, who just happened to be the best hockey player in the world. According to the Bruins public relations director Nate Greenberg, one of my toughest jobs in the day was trying to get Orr to come out of the trainer's room to talk to the press. The reason he wouldn't or didn't all the time was that he really wanted his teammates to get proper accolades, while everybody, all the time wanted him. As of 2010, Orr has not authorized a biography of himself, preferring to not be the center of attention. Free agency, and the move to Chicago. In September 1975, the Bruins and Eagleson had reached a deal that would pay Orr $4 million for 10 years. But when Orr's knee required surgery, the Bruins reduced its offer to $295,000 per season and a payment of $925,000 or 18.6% of the Bruins in June 1980. Eagleson turned down the offer and on June 7, 1976 was quoted in the Toronto Star as saying Boston offered a 5-year deal at $925,000 or 18.6% ownership of the club in 1980. I didn't think it would be wise for him to be a player-owner. On June 9, 1976, after Orr had signed with Chicago, Eagleson told the Toronto Globe and Mail that the Bruin offer was a 5-year offer for $295,000 a year. In addition, Orr was to receive $925,000 in cash payable in June 1980. That was to be a cash payment or involve Orr's receiving 18.6% of the Bruins stock. According to a famous 1990 story in the Toronto Star by Ellie Tesher, Orr stated that Eagleson never told him of the offer, during negotiations or after. While Eagleson had spoken publicly to reporters of the offer, he had not discussed it with Orr. In 1976, the Bruins offered Orr $600,000 per season, but he would have to pass a physical examination at the start of each season's training camp. Only the first year's money was guaranteed. Eagleson was quoted at the time as saying, "There is only one way that Bobby Orr will ever be back with the Bruins. And that's if Jeremy Jacobs asks him for another meeting and straightens out the whole situation. Otherwise he's gone." Instead, Orr became a free agent, with Boston to receive compensation. Orr and Eagleson whittled down a list of potential teams to St. Louis and Chicago. Chicago offered a 5-year guaranteed contract with the Blackhawks, and on June 8, 1976, he officially signed with the Black Hawks. The Bruins' general manager, Harry Sinden, complained of tampering by the Black Hawks, and demanded that Chicago owner Bill Wirtz submit to a lie detector test. According to documents held by Orr, they had a valid case. Orr signed with the Black Hawks at a secret meeting in May 1976, prior to becoming a free agent. Then Bruins head coach Don Cherry suggested that the reason Orr never re-signed with the Bruins was Orr's complete trust in Eagleson at the time. Cherry recalled Orr had refused to speak with the Bruins team president directly, allowing Eagleson to mislead or withhold enough details from Boston's offer. Orr's departure from the Bruins was acrimonious and he has not held an official role with the Bruins since. Years later, it emerged that Eagleson had very good relations with Black Hawks owner Bill Wirtz and NHL president John Ziegler that colluded to hold back salaries of certain players. Orr disassociated himself from Eagleson in 1980. Orr's contract with Chicago, 5 years in length, was for $3 million to be paid over 30 years. Spreading out the payments in this way was done to minimize taxes. While a player, he never cashed a Chicago paycheck, stating that he was paid to play hockey and would not accept a salary if he was not playing. 1976 Canada Cup After Orr signed with Chicago, the Black Hawks gave him permission to play for Team Canada in the 1976 Canada Cup tournament. Orr did not play in the 1972 Summit Series against the Soviet Union, and he wanted badly to play for Canada. Orr had been unable to play in the Summit Series due to knee surgery, although he did participate as a non-player. Orr's participation in the Canada Cup was considered ill-conceived and Eagleson later thought it may have been the last straw that killed his career. Orr himself said that he knew before the tournament that I knew I didn't have much longer. That series didn't do it. I thought I could get the next season in, but not much after that. I knew, looking at that team, I wouldn't have to do as much. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. Despite his knee, Orr's performance in the Canada Cup led to him being named to the tournament All-Star team and he was named the overall MVP for the tournament. According to teammate Bobby Clarke, Orr would hardly be able to walk on the morning of the game. And he would hardly be able to walk in the afternoon. And then, at night, he would be the best player on one of the greatest teams ever assembled. He was the best player in every game. He was the best player in the tournament. He couldn't skate like he used to, but he could still go. According to teammate Darryl Sittler, Bobby Orr was better on one leg than anybody else was on two. Retirement Orr signed with Chicago, but his injuries limited him to only 26 games over the next 3 seasons. He sat out the entire 1977 Euro 78 season. By 1978, Orr had undergone over a dozen knee surgeries, was having trouble walking and barely skated anymore. However, in the summer of 1978, he decided to make a comeback. He played 6 games of the 1978 Euro 79 season and came to the conclusion that he could no longer play and informed the Black Hawks that he was retiring. He started a new role as an assistant to Chicago general manager Bob Pulford. He scored his last NHL goal and point against Detroit on October 28, 1978, at Detroit's Olympia Stadium. Orr retired having scored 270 goals and 645 assists for 915 points in 657 games, adding 953 penalty minutes. At the time of his retirement, he was the leading defenceman in league history in goals, assists and points, 10th overall in assists and 19th in points. As of 2013, the only retired players in league history to have averaged more points per game than Orr are Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux and Mike Bossy, all of them forwards. Losing Bobby, said Gordie Howe, was the greatest blow the National Hockey League has ever suffered. The Hockey Hall of Fame waived the normal 3-year waiting period for induction into the hall and he was enshrined at age 31, the youngest player living at the time of his induction in history. Orr was the 8th player to have the 3-year period waived, the next 2 being Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, after which the hall decided that the waiting period would no longer be waived for any player except under certain humanitarian circumstances. His number 4 jersey was retired by the Bruins on January 9, 1979. At the ceremony, the crowd at Boston Garden would not stop applauding, and as a result, most of the evening's program had to be scrapped at the last second due to the constant cheering. The crowd did not allow Orr to say his thank you speech until he put on a Bruins jersey. The day was proclaimed Bobby Orr Day in Boston, and the event raised thousands of dollars for charity. He attended the Massachusetts Senate and House of Representatives and was given a 5-minute standing ovation. Boston Celtics basketball superstar Larry Bird said in his pre-game inspiration that he always looked up at the rafters of the Garden at Orr's retired number 4, instead of the retired numbers of Celtics stars such as Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, or John Havlicek. Style of play Orr inspired the game of hockey with his command of the two-way game. While a few Hall of Fame defensemen, such as Red Kelly, were known for having offensive ability, they were the exception rather than the norm in the NHL before Orr's arrival. Orr's offensive style has influenced countless defensemen who followed him. His speed most notably a rapid acceleration and his open ice artistry electrified fans as he set almost every conceivable record for a defenseman. When Orr and the Bruins visited cities, attendance was usually a sellout. According to longtime Bruins coach and general manager Harry Sinden, Bobby became a star in the NHL about the time they played the national anthem for his first game with us. Former Montreal Canadiens goaltender Ken Dryden described of Orr, when he began to move. The sensation was unique. All the Canadians began backpedaling in a small panic, like beachgoers sighting a coming monster wave. He brought others with him. He wanted them involved. That's what made him so different. It felt like a 5-player stampede moving toward our Euro, and at his pace. He pushed his teammates, because you're playing with the best player in the league and he's giving you the puck and you just can't mess it up. You had to be better than you'd ever been. In contrast to the style of hanging back defensive play common in the later 1950s and 1960s, Orr was known for his fluid skating and end-to-end rushing. Orr's rushing enabled him to be where the puck was, allowing him not only to score effectively but also to defend when necessary. According to the Bruins' Phil Esposito, no matter how fast an opponent was, Bobby could skate faster than him if he needed to do it in the framework of a play. If he was caught up ice and the other team had an odd man rush, that's when you saw his truly great speed. Very seldom did he not get back to have a hand in breaking up the play. Orr also benefited from playing most of his career in Boston Garden, which was 9 feet shorter than the standard NHL rink. This suited his rushing style very well, as he was able to get from one end of the ice to the other faster than in a standard rink. His style of play was hard on his left knee, leading to injuries and surgeries that shortened his career. The left knee took all of the punishment and was operated on 13 or 14 times according to Orr. Orr was a left-hand shot who played the right side. He would race down the right wing with the puck and attempt to beat the opposing defenseman using his speed and strength. He protected the puck, leading with his left knee, and holding his left arm up to fend off opponents. This put him into a position where a hit by the opposing defenseman would often hit the left knee. Also, he would often end up crashing into either the opposing goalie, the net or the end boards. It was the way I played, Orr has said. I like to carry the puck, and if you do that, you're going to get it. I wish I'd played longer, but I don't regret it. Orr stated in 2008. I had a style when you play all out. I tried to do things. I didn't want to sit back. I wanted to be involved. His right knee was basically undamaged during his career. His left knee looks like a road map of downtown Boston according to sports writer Bob McKenzie. His left knee was used in a MasterCard commercial in 2008, his scar lines used in an animation connecting his many achievements to the year of the individual scar line. According to a 2009 Sports Illustrated article, Orr has since had 2 knee replacement surgeries that have left him pain-free. Orr was also known for his mean streak. Former coach Don Cherry recounts an incident one night in Los Angeles during a game that the Bruins were losing. With a minute to go, Orr pulled one of the Bruins off the ice, left the bench and attacked a Los Angeles Kings player. Asked why, Orr said to Cherry he was laughing at us. According to Cherry, he fought a lot. On another occasion in November 1967, Orr was clipped in the face by a stick from the Toronto Maple Leafs' Brian Knighcher. Boston teammate Johnny McKenzie flattened Knighcher from behind and started punching Knighcher. Orr, cut and bleeding, got up from the ice, pulled McKenzie off Knighcher and started punching Knighcher. Knighcher, who was not fighting back, was also sucker punched by the Bruins' Ken Hodge. Orr would be booed in Toronto from that date onwards. Orr was frequently compared to Brad Park, who played a similar style to Orr and later succeeded Orr as Boston's top defenceman, and the two often fought each other on ice, fueling the bitter rivalry between the Bruins and New York Rangers. Park said, "I saw no reason to be upset because I was rated second to Bobby Orr." After all, Orr not only was the top defenseman in the game but he was considered the best player ever to put on a pair of skates. There was nothing insulting about being rated number 2 to such a superstar. Post-hockey career. Shortly after Orr retired, an independent accountant revealed that Orr's liabilities exceeded his assets, leaving him essentially bankrupt despite being supposedly one of the highest-paid players in the NHL. As well, Orr's taxes were under review. Eagleson had set up a corporation to receive Orr's income and pay Orr a salary, but the arrangement was rejected by U.S. and Canadian tax authorities. His assets in July 1980 totaled $456,604 and his tax, legal and accounting bills totaled $469,546. Eagleson, who had once said Orr was fixed for life, criticized Orr for living beyond his means and ignoring his investment advice. Orr split with Eagleson on April 1, 1980. As part of the legal settlement with Orr, Eagleson agreed to purchase various of Orr's assets for $620,000, including his Orr Walton hockey camp, which paid off $450,000 of Orr's bank loans. Orr served briefly as an assistant coach for Chicago, and as a consultant to the NHL and the Hartford Whalers. The Blackhawks balked at paying him the balance of his contract, and Orr took them to court, settling in 1983 for $450,000, one-third of the money they owed him. Of this, $200,000 went to taxes and legal fees. Orr moved back to the Boston area and formed Canam Enterprises with partners Tom Kelly and Paul Shanley, which built up a clientele of endorsements for Orr, including Baybank and Standard brands. Orr did eventually restore his finances, thanks to endorsement contracts and public relations work. Orr later played a role in the exposure of Eagleson's misconduct over the years. He had once considered Eagleson a big brother, but broke with him in 1980 in part because he suspected that Eagleson had not been truthful with him. In addition to misleading his clients about contract terms, Eagleson fraudulently used NHLPA funds to enrich himself. Orr was one of several players who filed a formal complaint of legal misconduct against Eagleson with the Law Society of Upper Canada over Eagleson's lending of trust monies without the consent or knowledge of his clients. In 1998, Eagleson was convicted of fraud, embezzlement and racketeering. After the conviction, Orr was one of 18 former players who threatened to resign from the Hockey Hall of Fame if Eagleson was not removed as a builder. Facing almost certain removal, Eagleson resigned instead. Orr was also involved in the 1991 lawsuit of retired NHL players against the NHL over its control of the players' pension fund. Eagleson was involved there too, arranging for the players to give up a seat on the trusteeship of the pension fund in 1969 to gain the acceptance of the NHLPA with the NHL owners. Orr and ex-Bruin Dave Forbes discussed the lawsuit with the sports newspaper The National. Orr, "Our money is being used to pay pensions for current players." The NHL's response was to file a notice of libel and slander against Orr and Forbes. Carl Brewer defended Orr in a letter to then NHL President John Ziegler. "It is regrettable that the NHL and the member clubs would resort to such treatment of one of our game's icons, Bobby Orr. And isn't it interesting that baseball players who started their pension plan in 1947, as did the NHL, have assets in their plan of some $500 million while we, as far as we can understand, have $31.9 million. The pension lawsuit was finally won by the players in 1994 after two courts ruled against the NHL. The NHL had appealed the case to the Supreme Court of Canada, which decided not to hear the case. Orr became an agent representing hockey players in 1996. Along with investors, Orr purchased the Wolf Associates agency founded by Boston lawyer Bob Wolf. To prevent conflicts of interest, Orr sold an investment in the Lower Lock Monsters minor pro hockey team and cut his ties with a credit card firm that had a contract with the NHLPA. Orr became a certified agent, although he would not be negotiating with hockey clubs. Player agent Rick Curran merged his agency with Orr's in 2000. Curran and Orr along with partner Paul Krapelka incorporated the agency as Orr Hockey Group in February 2002. The group represents such NHL players as Jeff Carter, Steve Downey, Taylor Hall, Nathan Horton, Adam McQuaid, Colton Orr, Patrick Sharp, Jason Spezza, Eric Stahl, Jordan Stahl, Mark Stahl, and Cam Ward. Spezza, asked to comment on the experience of having Orr as an agent, replied, "I don't think I have a true feeling for how great he is. I have so much respect for him. I watch him on tapes and it's just ridiculous how good he was compared to the guys he was playing against. He's a great guy and you don't even know it's Bobby Orr, the way he talks to you." For a number of years, Orr has coached a team of top Canadian Hockey League junior players against a similar team coached by Don Cherry in the annual CHL Top Prospects game. Cherry, briefly his former coach in Boston, considers Orr the greatest hockey player who ever lived, noting that Orr was a complete all-around player who could skate, score, fight, and defend. As of 2010, Orr's teams have won most of the games, winning 7 of the 11 times Orr has coached against Cherry. Orr's participation was criticized as a conflict of interest while he was a player's agent and he stopped coaching in the series. Organizers of the series convinced Orr to return to coaching in the series. He stepped down again before the 2011 game for the birth of his second grandchild. One of the teams remained named Team Orr. On November 3, 2013, Orr's long-awaited autobiography titled Orr, My Story, debuted at the number 8 position on the New York Times bestseller list for non-fiction. Personal life: while on vacation, Orr met Margaret Louise Peggy Wood, a Trenton, Michigan native and speech therapist who worked in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They became engaged on Christmas Day, 1972, and married in September 1973 at a secret ceremony in Parry Sound. They have 2 sons, Darren and Brent. Son Darren works as a player's agent at Orr Hockey Group. Orr's mother Ava died in November 2000, 18 months after being diagnosed with cancer. Orr's father Doug died in 2007. Orr became a grandfather when granddaughter Alexis was born in 2009. A second grandchild, Robert, was born in January 2011. Orr has been known to be fiercely loyal to former Bruin personnel and teammates. When Derek Sanderson had alcohol and prescription drug abuse problems and wound up penniless, Orr spent his own money to ensure that Sanderson successfully completed rehab. Decades later, Orr and Sanderson went into business together managing finances for hockey players. Orr also helped out Bruins trainer John Forrestall, his roommate during his first years with the Bruins, who had just been fired from the Tampa Bay Lightning for alcoholism in 1994. Forrestall's drinking put him on bad terms with his brother John, so he returned to Boston jobless and soon afterwards was diagnosed with brain cancer. Orr took Forrestall into his home for a year until he died at the age of 51. Orr was a pallbearer at his funeral. Orr is also well known for his charitable works, although he kept mention of them out of the newspaper. Former Eagle Tribune writer Russ Conway noted of one occasion when Orr and Conway visited Boston Children's Hospital, with a box of programs, pennants, pucks, pictures and Boston memorabilia, we went from room to room, all popping in, unannounced to visit the kids. Some couldn't believe their eyes. Sick as they were, they laughed in astonishment and delight. Bobby Orr. He talked and joked with every one of them, asking names, rubbing heads, giving everybody a little present from the box, leaving a stick, autographing everything in sight. Orr made Conway promise to not print a word in the newspaper. Orr was involved in numerous charity fundraisers. In 1980, Orr was awarded the Multiple Sclerosis Silver Hope Chest Award by the Multiple Sclerosis Society for his numerous and unselfish contributions to society. Among other personal interests, Orr has a passion for fishing which he has had since childhood. He has a talent for solving jigsaw puzzles quickly. Orr is also known for his taste in clothes and style of dress. When living as a bachelor with Forrestal during his years with the Bruins, Orr was also known for keeping a clean apartment and not drinking or smoking or going night clubbing. Orr projected a clean image. Honours. In 1979, Orr was invested as an officer in the Order of Canada. 2 buildings in Parry Sound honour Orr. A museum, called the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, where his Order of Canada medal is on display along with other exhibits. Also named in his honour is the Bobby Orr Community Centre, a multi-purpose entertainment facility located in his hometown of Parry Sound, Ontario. In 1995, Bobby Orr was inducted into the Ontario Sports Hall of Fame. Orr has been honoured with a star on Canada's Walk of Fame in Toronto. In 2004, an elementary school in South Oshawa named after Orr opened. On November 27, 2008, the Oshawa Generals retired Orr's number 2 jersey. The Generals had not issued the number since Orr transferred to the NHL in 1966. Orr thanked all who helped him in the 4 years he played in Oshawa. "I did a lot of growing up in Oshawa from ages 14 to 18 and I'll be forever grateful for those people who helped me in that time of my life." In February 2010, Orr was one of the 8 bearers of the Olympic flag at the opening ceremonies of the 2010 Vancouver Olympics. On May 10, 2010, the 40th anniversary of Orr scoring the game-winning goal against the St. Louis Blues in overtime to clinch the 1970 Stanley Cup, the Bruins commemorated the event with a bronze statue of Orr outside the TD Garden, the Bruins' home rink. The statue depicts Orr sprawled in mid-flight after scoring the goal. The unveiling was attended by many of Orr's past teammates. Orr spoke at the unveiling, "This specific moment and time we celebrate with this statue is something we can all now nostalgically remember with fondness, together, each time we enter Boston Garden. To all of you, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. I'm honored. Guys, thank you." In 2012, he received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. Career achievements: despite playing only 12 seasons and 657 games, and only playing 47 NHL games after his 27th birthday, Orr accomplished many records and achievements, a number of which still stand today, and are listed below. As of the end of the 2014 Euro 15 season, first and only defenceman to score 9 hat-tricks, first defenceman to score 30 goals and 40 goals in a season. First player to record 100 assists in a season, only defenceman to win the Hart Trophy as league leader in scoring, only player ever to win the Norris Trophy, Hart Trophy, Hart Trophy, and Conn Smythe Trophy in one season, highest single-season plus-minus rating, plus 124 in 1970-71. Second all-time in career plus-minus rating, plus 597. Fourth in league history in career point-per-game average, all-time, 62nd overall in league history in career assists and 97th in career points. Awards OHA First All-Star Team Euro 1964, 1965, 1966, awarded the Calder Memorial Trophy in 1967, the youngest ever to win the award, and the youngest ever to win a major NHL award up to that time, named to the second All-Star team in 1966 Euro 67, named to the NHL First All-Star team 8 times consecutively, awarded the James Norris Trophy 8 times, played in the NHL All-Star Game 8 times, won the Hart Trophy in 1969 Euro 70 and 1974 Euro 75, NHL plus-minus leader in 1969, 1970, 1971, 1972, 1974 and 1975, the most in history, awarded the Hart Memorial Trophy 3 times consecutively, awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy in 1970 and 1972, the first 2-time winner of the playoff MVP award, Stanley Cup winner in 1970 and 1972, won Lou Marsh Trophy as Canadian Athlete of the Year in 1970, NHL All-Star Game MVP in 1972, received Sports Illustrated magazine's Sportsman of the Year award in 1970, voted the greatest athlete in Boston history in the Boston Globe newspaper's poll of New Englanders in 1975, beating out baseball and basketball stars such as Ted Williams, Bill Russell, Carl Yastrzemski and Bob Cousy, awarded the Lester B. Pearson Award in 1975, named the Canada Cup Tournament MVP in 1976, awarded the Lester Patrick Trophy in 1979, inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1979, with the mandatory 3-year waiting period waived, making him the youngest inductee at 31 years of age, voted the second greatest hockey player of all time by an expert committee in 1997 by the Hockey News. Orr is behind only Wayne Gretzky and ahead of Gordie Howe, as well as being named the top defenseman of all time. Gretzky said he'd have voted for Orr, or for his hero, Gordie Howe. Ranked 31 in ESPN's Sports Century, 50 Greatest Athletes of the 20th Century in 1999, named the top defenseman of all time in 2010 by the Hockey News. Records most points in one NHL season by a defenseman, most assists in one NHL season by a defenseman. Highest plus-minus in one NHL season, tied for most assists in one NHL game by a defenseman, only player in history to win 4 major NHL awards in one season, as well as only player to win the Norris and Art Ross in the same season more than once. Fastest goal from start of overtime to clinch the Stanley Cup, 0:40 to 1970, records since surpassed, held record for most assists in one NHL season from 1970 to 1981, held record for most goals in one NHL season by a defenseman from 1968 to 1986, held record for most points by a defenseman in one game from 1973 until 1977 in game November 15, 1973, held record for longest consecutive point-scoring streak by a defenseman from 1971 until 1984. Held record for career goal scoring by a defenseman until surpassed by Denis Potvin in 1987. Held record for most consecutive 100 or more point seasons from 1974 until 1980. Held record for career plus-minus rating from 1978 until 1985. Held record for most assists in a season by any player from 1971 until 1981. Career statistics Career highs in each statistical category are marked in boldface. Source: hockeype.com. International play, was named to Canada's 1972 Summit Series team, but did not play due to injuries. Played for Team Canada in the 1976 Canada Cup. International statistics. See also, list of NHL players with 100-point seasons. References. Bibliography. External links, Order of Canada citation, Bobby Orr's career statistics at the Internet Hockey Database, Bobby Orr's biography at Legends of Hockey, Bobby Orr's player profile at NHL.com, Bobby Orr Hall of Fame website, his game-winning overtime goal ending the 1970 Stanley Cup Finals on YouTube.